There it was, that path I'd spent years wondering about. I've hiked most of my life, and these woods are full of trails. Some beautiful, some, let's just say, popular with the local teenagers. But this one was different, older, deeper. The kind of trail that feels like it's been waiting for someone, waiting for me. I'd always wanted to go down to it, but it was a long haul from my usual route. I spent months getting in shape just so I'd have the stamina to make the trip. I finally stood at the entrance. I was in the best shape of my life, lean, strong, and stubborn enough to ignore my own common sense. The path looked like a mouth swallowing the daylight. The trees were massive, ancient giants coated in moss thick as carpet. Their branches tangled so tightly overhead that the sky looked like a dark green ceiling. Only thin fingers of sunlight poked through, and they didn't reach far. Still, something about this place called to me. Every time I passed it on a regular hike, I felt that pull. Curiosity won. It usually does. The moment I stepped in, the temperature dropped. Not just cooler, cold. I zipped up my jacket, even though it had been almost 70 degrees before I stepped under the canopy. My breath didn't fog, but my skin tightened with goosebumps anyway. Everything felt too quiet. Then, breathing. I stopped walking and held my breath. The sound stopped too. My laugh echoed off the trees, thin, shaky. Paranoia, I told myself, just nerves. My instincts didn't agree. They screamed at me to turn around, to go back, go toward the light. But I pushed forward, deeper into the dark, and that's when I saw it. Something huge, 9 feet, maybe more, crossed the path up ahead. Too fast for a clear look, too big to belong here. We don't have apes in this part of the country, and the zoo's escape alarms hadn't been blaring lately. I tried telling myself I imagined it, but that strange, heavy feeling of being watched sank into my bones and wouldn't leave. The deeper I went, the worse it got. Eventually, even with my flashlight on, visibility dropped to almost nothing. The beam hit something carved into the trees. Primitive markings, shapes, symbols. Some looked like a crude timeline of evolution carved into the bark, but the final stage, humans, was missing. Like we were the myth, like they were the ones telling the story. A branch snapped under my boot and echoed through the woods like a gunshot. I froze. Something was out there, and it wasn't afraid of me. I kept moving, heart hammering, until a faint yellow glow flickered between the trees. Firelight, and the smell, meat cooking. My stomach reminded me it had been hours since I ate, and for a second I felt relieved. Maybe someone was camping, and maybe they could help me get out. I switched off my flashlight and crept toward the glow. When I reached the clearing, I stopped breathing. Around the fire stood several tall simian creatures. Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to call them. Their fur shimmered in the firelight as they communicated in deep grunts and throaty calls. But the fire wasn't the worst part. Skewered over the flames was a human torso, arms and legs, no head. The creatures didn't look savage. They looked organized, efficient, hunters. I stumbled backward, snapping twigs under my boots. Every head turned in my direction. My instincts took over. I ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots tried to trip me. My lungs burned, but none of it mattered. I knew I was being chased. I could hear heavy footsteps somewhere behind me, matching my pace, closing in. I hit the familiar carvings again, but now the forest exploded with sound. Snapping branches, shaking leaves, something massive was tearing through the undergrowth. I sprinted, harder than I ever had in my life. I don't know how long I ran. Time didn't make sense. Only distance. Only escape. When the glow of sunset finally bled through the canopy ahead, I nearly collapsed with relief. I burst out of the darkness and into the open trail, the sky above painted orange and gold. My car sat alone at the end of the dirt road like salvation on 4 wheels. I fumbled the keys, ripped the door open, and threw myself inside. Only then did I look in the rearview mirror. One of them stood at the tree line. Massive. Dark. Its sloped forehead shadowing intelligent, furious eyes. It bared its teeth at me, challenging me, daring me to step out. I revved the engine. It flinched, then disappeared into the trees. The drive home was silent. Too silent. People talk about Bigfoot like it's some gentle forest giant, a harmless myth, a blurry figure on a hiker's shaky camera. But every year people go missing. Some are never found. Maybe that's not a coincidence. Maybe the reason we've never captured one alive is because the people who discover the truth don't make it back. Me, I was lucky, but I'll tell you this much. I'm never going back to that path. Not for anything. Not ever. I've only had one encounter in my life that I still can't explain. And it happened when I lived alone in the woods of Stevens County, Washington. Back then, I owned a small patch of land tucked deep in a canyon. No electricity, no running water, no neighbors for miles. Just endless timber and a long dirt and gravel driveway that wound half a mile up a 300-foot incline. The kind of place where the nights are so quiet, they hum, and where I once watched wolves chase a full-grown cow moose across my property at dusk. Out there, you see things most people only read about. One night, just after dark, my dog started barking, but it wasn't her usual bark. This one sounded confused, almost questioning, like she wasn't sure if what she was seeing was real. That was the only reason I went outside at all. I grabbed a cheap half-dead Walmart flashlight, the kind that costs less than the batteries, and stepped out into the cold. I've always had good night vision, light blue eyes, used to hunting. But even then, nothing prepared me for what I was about to see. My dog, a big Mastiff Lab Pyrenees mix, was standing behind my car, staring down the driveway with her hackles raised. I walked behind the vehicle and followed her gaze, and then froze. Something was standing in the driveway, about 60 feet away. It was enormous, motionless, its entire body outlined by the faint glow of Spokane's light pollution creeping over the treetops. I raised the dying flashlight and swept the beam toward it. That's when I saw the eyes. They shined back at me, large, reflective, unblinking, level with a branch I drove under every single day, a branch I couldn't even touch if I stood on my toes. This thing was over 8 feet tall and built like a refrigerator wrapped in muscle. I couldn't see its face, only the silhouette, but the shape was unmistakable. Broad shoulders, 4 to 5 feet wide easy, a chest at least 2 feet thick, arms hanging low, still as a statue. And there we stood, two shapes in the dark staring at each other. It never growled, never stepped toward me, never made a sound. Eventually, it shifted as casually as a man deciding he had had enough of a conversation, and turned into the brush. Heavy brush. The kind that I could barely squeeze through, but it stepped inside like it wasn't even there and vanished. My dog bolted forward, nosed it into the brush, and a second later I heard a growl and a yelp. Fear, not aggression. She came sprinting back out with her tail shoved between her legs and glued herself behind me. Whatever she saw in there, she wanted no part of. I walked back to the house, locked the door, and told my wife what I'd seen. My voice was steady, but inside I felt the ground had shifted. People talk about Bigfoot weighing 800 pounds. That's a joke. This thing had to be 12 to 1400, easy. I'm 300 myself, and this creature made me feel small. And the strangest part? It acted more like a person than an animal. A bear or a cougar would have run. My dog would have gone into full protection mode. But this thing, she was confused first and terrified second. Since that night, I've read everything I can find. I don't care if people believe me or not. Anyone who knows me does. And I grew up hearing the stories, like the old logging foreman who worked in Western Washington. He always said that within 3 days of setting up a new camp, you could walk the perimeter and find fresh tracks every time. Whatever I saw that night, it wasn't curious. It wasn't afraid. It wasn't hostile. It was just watching. And somehow, that's the part that haunts me the most.